I did everything right. I went to school. I listened. I followed the advice. I tried to be responsible. I did what I was told would lead somewhere. And from the outside, it looked like it worked. There was no big failure, no collapse, no dramatic mistake. But inside, something felt wrong. Not panic, not sadness, just a strange sense of being lost. I couldn't explain it because nothing was technically broken. I had made progress. I had stability. I was doing what adults are supposed to do. So why did it feel like I was moving without direction? Why did life feel more like maintenance than purpose? That confusion was the hardest part. Not knowing what was missing, only knowing that something was. And the most unsettling realization was this: if doing everything right still leaves you feeling lost, then maybe the problem was never you. From an early age, most of us are given a script. Go to school. Pay attention. Work hard. Be responsible. If you follow these steps, you're told life will eventually make sense. So, you do exactly that. You focus on what's expected of you. You choose the safe options. You aim for stability instead of uncertainty. You measure progress by milestones, grades, certificates, jobs, routines. And for a long time, this approach works. You're praised for being disciplined. You're seen as mature. You're doing well. But here's the part no one mentions. This script was never designed to help you understand yourself. It was designed to help you function. It teaches you how to survive in systems, how to meet expectations, how to avoid trouble. It doesn't teach you how to ask whether the path fits you. So, when you reach the milestones, something feels off. You didn't make bad choices. You made the recommended ones. And that's why the confusion hits so hard. Because when things go wrong, at least there's an explanation. But when you do everything right and still feel lost, there's no clear reason to point to. You followed the instructions. You played the game correctly. Yet instead of clarity, you feel directionless. That's not failure. That's the moment you realize the difference between following a path and actually choosing one. At some point, progress starts to feel different. You're still moving forward on paper. You're still checking boxes. You're still doing what comes next. But the movement feels empty. Life becomes about maintaining what you've built rather than building toward something new. Days revolve around responsibilities, routines, and small goals that keep things running but don't pull you forward. You're busy, but not excited. Productive, but not inspired. This is when feeling lost quietly appears. Not because you've stopped trying, but because you've stopped choosing. The direction was decided long ago, and now you're simply continuing it out of momentum. Progress without intention feels like drifting. And drifting is confusing because it looks like movement from the outside. People assume you're doing well. You assume you should be satisfied. So you keep going. But internally, the sense of purpose that once pushed you forward fades. Goals lose emotional weight. Achievements feel smaller than expected. You start to ask questions you didn't have time for before. Why does this feel so repetitive? Why don't these milestones feel meaningful anymore? Why do I feel behind even though I'm technically on track? This isn't a crisis. It's a transition. It's the moment you realize that being busy isn't the same as being directed, and that forward motion doesn't automatically mean you're headed somewhere you actually want to be. Feeling lost here doesn't mean you failed. It means the old map has stopped working. One of the hardest parts of feeling lost is how quiet it is. There's no clear moment where you can say, "This is when it started." No obvious mistake. No visible breakdown. Just a slow realization that something isn't aligning anymore. And almost no one talks about it. Not because it's rare, but because it's uncomfortable. Most people who went through this phase didn't resolve it. They adapted to it. They learned how to manage the feeling instead of understanding it. Over time, The confusion faded into routine, and routine became normal. So when someone younger expresses doubt, the response is often dismissal rather than honesty. That's just adulthood. You'll get used to it. It's like that for everyone. These responses aren't meant to harm. They're meant to protect. Admitting that this phase exists and that it matters would require reflection. It would force people to revisit choices they no longer want to question. So silence becomes tradition. The feeling gets passed down, unexamined, from one generation to the next. Everyone assumes they're the only one struggling with it, when in reality, it's shared by many. This is what makes the experience feel isolating. You don't just feel lost, you feel like you're not allowed to feel lost. And that silence keeps people stuck longer than necessary. Not because there's no way forward, but because no one gave it a name. Once you understand that this phase exists, that it's common and human, something shifts. The confusion becomes less frightening, and the feeling of being lost starts to look less like a failure and more like a signal. Feeling lost after doing everything right doesn't mean you made a mistake. It means the life you were given instructions for is no longer enough to guide you. You didn't fail the system. You outgrew the script. This phase isn't a breakdown, it's a pause between identities. A moment where old expectations stop working, but new direction hasn't formed yet. And that uncertainty feels uncomfortable, especially in a world that values certainty so highly. But being lost doesn't mean you're behind. It means you're paying attention. And attention is where real choices begin. If this feeling resonates with you, you're not alone. You're simply at the beginning of a more honest path.